Not only did the Chinese show deceit for their brazen action to host down the Philippine Coast Guard in Ayungin Shoal, while repeatedly radio calls or communications to them went on without response, they've even outdone themselves by going full Pinocchio and insisting the Philippines did not follow through on an alleged deal to take the BRP Sierra Madre away from the Ayungin Shoal.
Chinese Coast Guard has been usually doing, making use of their water cannon to prevent the supply boats for reaching the BRP Sierra Madre and completing the resupply mission.
The activities of China in any area, whether in the Sierra Madre or any area under their nebulous claims, are a matter not only of concern but of condemnation, because these are in gross violations of international law.
We rotate the troops, we provide them supplies. We are responsible for the upkeep, the maintenance, the safety, and the comfort of the BRP Sierra Madre, not the construction.
The latest resupply mission to 2nd Thomas Shoal unfolded under conditions far more tense than the official statements suggest. At first, the operation moved with the steady, disciplined pace typical of these runs. Vessels carrying essential supplies, personnel rotations scheduled down to the minute, and a clear objective to sustain the detachment aboard the BRP Sierra Madre. Everything proceeded routinely until an unexpected silence cut through the mission. Communication lines went dead without warning. Radios that moments earlier carried clear instructions fell completely quiet, stripping the crew of real-time coordination at one of the most sensitive flashpoints in the region. The source of the disruption became apparent almost immediately. Chinese Coast Guard vessels, which had been shadowing the mission from a calculated distance, were now suspected of jamming communication links throughout the shoal. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was unmistakably deliberate. The electronic interference removed the safety net that constant communication provides, leaving crews to navigate the operation with nothing but training, composure, and instinct. Despite the silence in their equipment, the mission continued. Supplies were offloaded, personnel were rotated, and every step was carried out under the discreet but heavy presence of Chinese vessels maintaining close watch. Officials familiar with the situation later confirmed, quietly and without attribution, that the jamming appeared designed to limit surveillance, possibly preventing drone monitoring from external actors. The intention wasn't to provoke a visible confrontation, but to shape the environment in ways that complicate even the simplest logistical effort. This approach has become increasingly familiar in recent months. Pressure applied not through direct aggression, but through controlled, calculated interference that signals capability without crossing the threshold into open conflict. Once the mission was complete, authorities publicly described the operation as having proceeded without incident, a phrase that masks the level of tension felt on the water. Those involved know that silence doesn't always mean calm. Sometimes it's the clearest indicator of the risks unfolding beneath the surface. Every successful run reinforces presence at the shoal. Every challenge, from shadowing to jamming, shows how contested these waters have become. And in between these two realities are the crews who carry out the work, maintaining their focus and discipline even when the environment shifts into uncertainty. China's decision to jam communications during the resupply mission appears to be far more layered than a simple act of interference. At the most immediate level, the jamming served to block real-time drone surveillance from external militaries, particularly the United States, whose drones and reconnaissance aircraft frequently observe these operations. China is highly sensitive to any foreign eyes documenting its behavior at the shoal, especially actions that could be used as evidence in diplomatic protests or international legal forums. By cutting off the digital view, Beijing reduces the likelihood that high-definition, time-stamped footage of its maneuvers will circulate globally. But the strategy extends beyond hiding specific moments. Electronic warfare fits into a growing toolkit China uses to shape the battle space without ever firing a shot. Gray zone tactics, including laser dazzling, water cannon attacks, underwater acoustic interference, and now radio jamming, allow China to escalate pressure while still claiming it is avoiding conflict. These operations test response times, expose vulnerabilities, and force the other side to adapt under stress. From a military standpoint, jamming creates a brief but meaningful window of uncertainty. When radios go silent, coordination becomes more difficult, situational awareness narrows, and vessels must rely on fixed plans instead of dynamic updates. It introduces hesitation into what is already one of the most delicate missions the Philippines conducts. Even a momentary pause can disrupt timing, slow the delivery of supplies, or create opportunities for Chinese vessels to reposition more aggressively without being detected through shared communication channels. Jamming also sends a signal to Manila and its allies. China can selectively control the information environment around the shoal whenever it chooses. It's a reminder that technology, not just ship numbers, is becoming a decisive factor in maritime standoffs. By demonstrating electronic dominance, Beijing challenges the notion that outside surveillance guarantees transparency or security during these missions. At a wider strategic level, this action fits China's long-term effort to normalize its presence and operational superiority within what it considers its maritime backyard. The West Philippine Sea is increasingly treated by Beijing as a zone where it can test advanced electronic capabilities under real-world conditions. Every resupply mission offers a live scenario to refine jamming techniques, evaluate Philippine reaction patterns, and measure how quickly outside militaries respond or adjust their monitoring. The message is subtle but powerful. China doesn't need force to influence outcomes. It can alter the environment itself. The result is a psychological effect that lingers long after the mission ends. Crews know that at any moment, their equipment can be muted, their visibility reduced, and the margin for error tightened. In this sense, the jamming wasn't just a tactical act. It was a demonstration of reach, a rehearsal of capability, and a reminder that the contest for control at Second Thomas Shoal is being fought not only with ships, but with the invisible tools of modern warfare. The BRP Sierra Madre stands at the center of the Second Thomas Shoal dispute, not because it is powerful, but because it refuses to disappear. Grounded deliberately in 1999, the rusting World War II-era transport ship was never meant to be a modern fortress. Its value lies in something far more strategic: presence. By beaching the vessel at the shoal, the Philippines created a permanent, physical marker of its claim, a measure that turns a vulnerable old hull into one of the most important geopolitical assets in the region. Every year that passes, every tide that washes against its metal bones, reinforces the message that the country maintains a foothold in the contested waters. And despite its age and deterioration, the Sierra Madre continues to serve exactly that purpose, anchoring a claim in a place where paper declarations alone mean very little. Inside this weather-beaten outpost is a small, rotating detachment of Marines carrying out one of the most isolated postings in the modern military world. Their daily lives are shaped by the realities of the shoal: limited space, rough conditions, unpredictable weather, and constant observation from foreign vessels that never drift far from view. These personnel rely entirely on resupply missions for everything: food, fresh water, fuel, medical supplies, maintenance materials, and even the most basic necessities. The Sierra Madre cannot produce anything on its own. Its survival depends on the predictable arrival of these missions, which is precisely why every interference carries weight. When a supply run succeeds, the outpost endures. When it is disrupted, the crew feels the strain immediately. The ship's decaying structure has transformed into a symbol of endurance itself, reflecting the toughness of those who live aboard it. Strategically, the Sierra Madre is far more than a decaying ship. It is the only standing obstacle preventing China from taking full control of Second Thomas Shoal. If the outpost were abandoned or removed, the vacuum would be filled instantly, and the geopolitical balance in the area would shift dramatically. That is why the ship remains, and why the standoff surrounding it continues to escalate. China has repeatedly demanded its removal, framing the ship as an illegally grounded vessel. The Philippines, meanwhile, has made just as clear that the Sierra Madre is a legitimate, sovereign installation, a physical embodiment of its maritime rights under international law. As long as the ship remains in place, Manila maintains a direct, uncontested presence on the shoal. Its continued existence is not just symbolic, it is a strategic deterrent. To remove it willingly would be to concede the position entirely.
I'm not aware of any agreement that the Philippines should remove from its own territory its own ship, the SP Sierra Madre, from the UNCLOS. And let me go further. If there does exist such an agreement, I rescind that agreement as of now.
Over the years, the Sierra Madre has become more than a military asset. It is a reminder of how modern territorial contests are fought, not just through force, but through endurance, persistence, and continuous presence. The ship's rusted metal tells a story that satellites and statements cannot, a front line held not by overwhelming firepower, but by commitment. And as long as resupply missions continue to break through pressure and interference, the Sierra Madre will keep standing, carrying the weight of an entire maritime claim on its steel frame.
The 2024 non-aggression arrangement between Manila and Beijing was supposed to create a breathing space in the West Philippine Sea, a temporary understanding designed to prevent the dangerous physical confrontations that had marked previous years. It wasn't a treaty, and it wasn't a formal agreement, more a quiet, practical acknowledgement that both sides needed to step back from escalating incidents involving ramming, blocking, water cannons, and close-quarter maneuvering. In principle, it served as a safety valve. In practice, it allowed resupply missions to proceed with far fewer violent encounters. Over the months that followed, 12 missions reached the BRP Sierra Madre without the dramatic collisions that had drawn global attention in the past. But while the arrangement reduced overt physical confrontations,
It did not remove the tension that defines Second Thomas Shoal. Instead, the pressure simply changed form. Rather than aggressive hull-to-hull engagements, the tactics shifted toward electronic warfare and psychological operations. The absence of water cannons was replaced by the quiet buzz of electronic interference. Jamming became more frequent, surveillance more intense, and the choreography of shadowing vessels more calculated. China's message was the same: persistent presence and control, but the method evolved to stay technically within the boundaries of the arrangement. What happened on paper was non-aggression. What happened on the water was a subtler form of coercion. For Philippine crews, this shift brought a different kind of strain. Physical clashes create immediate danger, but electronic interference introduces uncertainty.
when communications fail or signals become unreliable, crews are forced into an environment where decisions must be made with limited information and reduced coordination. The tactics are less visible from the outside, but no less impactful. The arrangement may have prevented high-intensity confrontations, yet it created a new landscape where pressure is felt through silence, disruption, and constant monitoring rather than direct force. The 2024 non-aggression arrangement bought time and lowered the temperature of public incidents, but it did not resolve the deeper contest for control. It simply moved the conflict from the physical to the invisible, a shift from open confrontation to the quiet but persistent tools of modern gray zone strategy. And as long as both sides rely on this fragile understanding, every mission to the Sierra Madre will continue to unfold under a balance that is stable in appearance, but fragile beneath the surface. China's presence around Second Thomas Shoal has changed noticeably over the past year, becoming broader, more organized, and increasingly assertive. What used to be occasional patrols by the China Coast Guard has grown into a near-constant rotation of vessels, often accompanied by ships suspected to be part of China's maritime militia. Together, they form a layered presence designed to project authority at all times, signaling that China intends to maintain control of the surrounding waters regardless of ongoing diplomatic tensions. This buildup isn't random. It reflects a deliberate effort to establish a sense of inevitability, a steady drumbeat of activity meant to pressure the outpost without pushing the situation into outright conflict. Some of these vessels now appear more heavily armed than in previous years, with mounted machine guns that are visibly larger and more capable than what was typically seen around the shoal. The appearance of these enhanced weapons subtly raises the stakes, not by firing shots, but by changing the visual landscape. When crews look out from the Sierra Madre or from approaching supply ships, they no longer see lightly equipped patrol boats. They see vessels prepared to enforce their presence with kinetic force if ordered. That shift alone adds psychological weight to every maneuver and every mission. It communicates that China is not just monitoring the shoal, but is prepared to defend its interpretation of maritime control with hardware that is increasingly difficult to ignore. The airspace above the shoal has become just as active.
Reports of a Chinese helicopter operating in the area, along with an unmanned surveillance drone, indicate a growing vertical dimension to China's monitoring efforts. These assets allow Beijing to observe activities from multiple angles, build a more complete intelligence picture, and react more quickly to movements around the outpost. For crews on the water, the presence of aircraft adds another layer of pressure, a reminder that they are being watched not just from nearby ships, but from above, where every action can be recorded and assessed in real time. Physical maneuvers have evolved as well. Water cannon drills conducted near the shoal demonstrate both capability and intent, showing that China can rapidly escalate pressure at a moment's notice.
Close-range shadowing has become more precise, with some vessels positioning themselves only meters away from Philippine ships. In one of the closest recent instances, a Chinese vessel reportedly approached within about 50 meters of the BRP Sierra Madre, a distance so tight that even a minor steering error would have resulted in a collision. These maneuvers are not accidental. They are deliberate demonstrations of control, designed to unsettle, intimidate, and remind the outpost defenders of the imbalance in size, capability, and numbers. China's evolving presence around the shoal reveals a strategy centered on persistent pressure rather than isolated displays of force.
Every new vessel, upgraded weapon, aerial patrol, and close-range maneuver contributes to a broader pattern, a steady tightening around the Sierra Madre, intended to restrict operational space and reinforce China's claims without crossing into open conflict. The result is an environment where tension is constant, even when no confrontation is occurring, a modern contest of endurance, technology, and willpower, playing out in one of the most heavily watched stretches of water in the region.
The Philippines has responded to the growing intensity around Second Thomas Shoal with a strategy that is deliberate, adaptive, and far more sophisticated than it appears on the surface. While the public sees only the final result of each resupply mission, the planning behind them has evolved in ways that reflect both caution and resilience. Mission routes now shift quietly from one operation to the next, avoiding predictable patterns and reducing the chances of interception or aggressive shadowing. Timings are altered as well, with departures calibrated to weather, Chinese vessel placement, and surveillance patterns detected in the hours leading up to each run. These adjustments allow Manila to stay one step ahead, ensuring that the Sierra Madre remains supplied despite the intense scrutiny around the shoal.
At the same time, the Philippines has strengthened its coordination with international surveillance networks, particularly U.S. intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems. These assets help monitor Chinese ship movements, aerial activity, and electronic signatures in real time, giving Philippine planners a clearer picture of the environment they are navigating. The country also maintains a policy of transparency, documenting each mission through internal reports, photos, and videos to counter misleading narratives and present a factual account of events to the international community. Diplomatically, Manila walks a narrow path, firm in enforcing its sovereignty and legal rights, yet cautious enough to avoid steps that could push the situation into uncontrollable escalation. The approach is subtle but intentional. Remain steady, remain visible, and remain anchored to international law. The tension at Second Thomas Shoal cannot be understood without looking at the wider contest unfolding across the South China Sea. China's sweeping claim, represented by the 9-dash line, asserts control over nearly the entire region, including areas recognized under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea as belonging to other coastal states. Second Thomas Shoal falls well within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, making the outpost not only a matter of national pride, but also a legal and maritime right upheld by international arbitration. This legal foundation gives Manila strong footing, yet the realities on the water show how aggressively Beijing continues to enforce its own interpretation of maritime boundaries. Other regional claimants, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan, watch developments around the shoal with close attention. Each has its own disputes with China, and each understands that the outcome of confrontations here may influence how Beijing behaves elsewhere. The shoal has become a small stage with a large audience, especially as major powers take an interest. The United States, bound by its mutual defense treaty with the Philippines, repeatedly affirms that any attack on Philippine vessels, aircraft, or personnel in the South China Sea would trigger treaty obligations. This commitment adds weight to every incident, no matter how small, and provides Manila with a strategic buffer. It also explains why China's electronic jamming has increased, undermining surveillance and limiting the ability of allies to gather evidence, shifts the information advantage back toward Beijing. Despite the absence of gunfire, the situation around Second Thomas Shoal remains one of the most combustible in the Indo-Pacific. A single miscalculation, an overly aggressive maneuver, a misinterpreted signal, a collision at close range could transform a tense standoff into a regional crisis. Water cannon use, swarming tactics, and increasingly tight approaches have brought ships within dangerous distances, raising the risk that routine missions could spiral into something far more serious. The 2024 non-aggression arrangement faces ongoing tests each time a new incident unfolds. It has reduced the number of violent confrontations, but every episode of jamming, intimidation, or aggressive positioning pushes its limits and exposes how fragile the current balance truly is.
Second Thomas Shoal has now become a litmus test for broader maritime dynamics. What unfolds here may influence future behavior in other contested areas, shape regional security alignments,
and determine how aggressively states enforce their maritime claims. If tensions escalate, the consequences would reverberate far beyond the shoal, affecting trade routes, military deployments, and diplomatic stability across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. The shoal is small, but the geopolitical forces surrounding it are enormous.
The latest resupply mission may have concluded without visible confrontation, but beneath the calm exterior lies a significant strategic shift. China is increasingly moving away from overt physical aggression and toward the sophisticated tools of electronic warfare, information control, and psychological pressure. This evolution marks a new phase in the contest, one that is quieter on the surface, but far more complex to navigate. For Manila, steady persistence, international support, and a commitment to transparency remain essential to holding the line. The BRP Sierra Madre continues to be the country's last physical foothold on the shoal, and as long as it stands, 2nd Thomas Shoal will remain the front line of a broader struggle for maritime rights. It is a quiet place on the map, yet it remains one of Asia's most sensitive flashpoints, a test of endurance, strategy, and resolve that will shape the region's future for years to come. If you liked the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for deep analysis of contemporary issues.